Good afternoon and welcome to the second in the C4L series of webinars, Cloud from a Business Perspective. This one is going to focus specifically on cloud security. Just before we begin, I want to just launch a couple of polls to find out a little bit about our audience today. So the first one here is, do you have an existing cloud setup? And I've just launched that now. I'll give you a couple of seconds to give your answers. It's looking like the majority of participants today do. I'll give you a couple more seconds there. Okay, thank you for that. I'm just going to launch our second one now. How concerned are you about cloud security? Slightly more of a spread on that one, it's looking like. Number of you still researching. Hopefully we can give you some answers today. Give you a couple more seconds on that. Okay, thank you for that. Right, introductions. Firstly, just a little bit about C4L. We were founded in the year 2000. Since then, we've grown very dramatically, as you can see with some of the percentages there. We're now present in more than 40 different data centers across the UK and Europe. And our achievements have been recognised. Here we've listed the Microsoft Tech Track, but also in the Deloitte Fast 50 and various others. We offer a range of data centre and internet infrastructure products. We are specialists in cloud, public, private and hybrid cloud solutions. We do also offer online storage and what some people would deem cloud backup, and various of our staff hold Cisco, VMware and Microsoft accreditations. Very briefly, just a little bit about me. I'm a technical consultant for the company. I've done a number of different jobs, working in both voice and data fields, and I'm a real cloud fanatic. Okay, just a little bit of introduction what we're going to do today. As I mentioned, this is the second webinar in our series. The first one, Cloud from a Business Perspective, which was the introduction. If you didn't get a chance to join us for that, is available on YouTube as well as our website. We've got a link for you there. Please feel free to watch it, and if you do have any questions on that one, please feel free to drop me a mail. Likewise, if there are any questions you have during the course of this webinar, please feel free to ask and I'll resolve those at the end of the presentation. Okay, so what do we mean by cloud? We covered this briefly in the last one, but we've just got a couple of different definitions here. IT services without the need to buy or manage infrastructure, and delivers computing as a service rather than a product. Well, today we're going to focus specifically on infrastructure as a service, or IaaS, and this is the element of cloud that we are going to be specific about. Thankfully, IaaS is far easier to nail down exactly what it is as opposed to the term cloud. We've got a definition here. IaaS is the outsourcing of equipment used to support operations, including storage, hardware, servers and networking components. As I mentioned, it's far more clearly defined than cloud, and part of that is because it resides within what we call the SPI model. So we have a little look at the SPI model here. The first stack we've got here is the IaaS, or Infrastructure as a Service. The P stands for Platform and Platform as a Service, and at the end here, the large stack, we've got Software as a Service. The reason for defining what we're talking about today is firstly because the security approach differs, and secondly because the level of security involvement and responsibility moves between yourself and your cloud provider depending on what type of service you're taking. So to give you an example of what we mean when we're talking about these different models, SaaS or Software as a Service, we would look at something like Gmail, where the hardware and the software and the application is provided for you, and you merely log in, you access it via, in that case, a web browser, and you have no involvement in the day-to-day running and administration of the levels below it. If we move down to Platform as a Service, an example of this would be something like Force.com, and Infrastructure as a Service, which we're going to discuss today, is purely providing the hardware infrastructure and taking away that hassle of managing it. As I mentioned, the security ownership differs greatly between them. The further down the stack you are, the more security responsibility you need to take within your own organization, very much more towards the level you would have had to have done previously when you had in-house internet-facing solutions. So we're now going to break down the security elements into different sections, the first of which is customer segregation. When you're sitting on a cloud platform, the segregation of the various different resources is done. The hypervisor will divvy up the compute and memory resources and contain those within the various virtual machines. Each of the virtual machines sitting on top of the hypervisor will have no knowledge that it's either a virtual machine or that the other machines that reside on the shared hardware exist either. Each one, as far as it's aware, is its own self-serving system with its own dedicated hardware. And by doing this, all of the machines are compartmentalized and all of the information passing through them is unique to that machine. When you get to the disk element of it, this is separated out on a SAN, and there's various techniques for segregating individual customer data there, such as LAN masking, etc. So the customer information is segregated uniquely into their own portion of the resource. We've got a nice diagram here that very nicely divvies up the various elements of the customer allocations. It's very nicely compartmentalized here. It's not always quite as easily done as that, but it does give you an idea that customer allocation can exist across any of the SANs here within the cloud, and the customer has an allocation of that which is dedicated to them. Now we're going to move on and have a look at some of the threats within the cloud. So we've got a mind map here. It's not necessarily every consideration you need to have when moving to the cloud, but definitely things you need to be thinking about. What we're going to have a look at now is how this differs in a more traditional data center internet-facing setup. As you can see, all of the considerations you need in the cloud we've just mentioned are exactly the same within a hosted or a data center environment. We're now going to have a look how that changes if we look at an in-house environment. As you can see, a couple of those items have disappeared, but we do need to add back in threats that would exist in an in-house environment that wouldn't within a data center environment. Some of these are quite obvious, like physical security. How secure is your office? Can people break in and get to your equipment? Do you have CCTV? Who has access to where the systems reside? These are things which are covered off much more easily within a data center environment because as standard data centers come with CCTV, logging of who enters and exits the buildings, and they are very secure by design. Okay, moving on now to the security relationship. These are questions you need to be asking both within your organization and to your service provider. The ones within your own organization are perhaps things you've been thinking about for any internet-facing services for some time, such as what operating system are we going to be using, security patching, keeping your security level up to date, who is going to have responsibility for that, what sort of data is going to be stored, and when is it going to be encrypted? Is it going to be encrypted in transit? Is it going to be just encrypted when it's on the machine? Things like that, which you've probably already been considering. Then you need to have a look at your cloud provider and start asking some questions of them, because they are going to hold a portion of the security responsibility. So at the top here we've got where is the data stored and in which country. Very important if you're going to be somebody like an FSA regulated organisation, and also for complying with the Data Protection Act. So where is the data going to be stored? Is it in the UK? Is it within the EU? If you start moving it outside of the EU, you then have different jurisdiction that governs that data. And there's been a number of high-profile cases in the media about that. Looking down at some of the other things here, is there a DR optional business continuity plan that your cloud provider can offer you? Do they hold the relevant security accreditations? This one is becoming increasingly more demanded by the market, and something you should be able to ask them and get a copy of if necessary. So coming to the crux of the question, is the cloud safe? This sadly is not a simple yes or no answer. You need to consider a range of factors and ask, as we've mentioned, the relevant questions both within your own organisation and also with your cloud provider. Get that demarcation point between your two organisations as to who is going to be responsible for the various parts of the security. Is any one person going to have access to all the security layers, or are you going to spread this out amongst various different people? Also think about what data you're going to be storing. Again, as I mentioned, encryption, when is it going to be encrypted and who is going to be responsible for doing that? If you want to gain some of the advantages of cloud, but you want to have a greater hold on some of the security elements, you may also want to consider private or hybrid cloud options. This is something we're going to cover in a lot more detail in our next webinar, but it's something you do need to be thinking about possibly at this stage. So drawing everything to a conclusion, as we mentioned, cloud security needs to have a well thought out approach. Where is the demarcation point between you and your provider going to be? As we mentioned, a lot of the perceived threats are not new. Most of them have existed in any internet-facing services you've had previously, and indeed some of the security elements of in-house internet-facing services that you may have had previously have now been removed by moving them to a cloud environment. And as we mentioned, if you want to experience some of the benefits of cloud, but some of the security constraints that govern your business are too stringent, you may want to have a look at private or hybrid cloud options. What I'm going to now do is open up the option for people to ask any questions, and whilst I do that, I'm also going to open up our last poll, which I'm going to launch now, which regards whether your partners or customers require you to be concerned about security in the cloud. I think this is something it looks like a number of people still need to have a think about, as some of you aren't sure about it. What I'm now going to do is also take, we've got a couple of questions, so I'm going to take the first one. Do you have, what is your DR and continuity plan? It was something I touched upon earlier on that you should be asking your cloud provider. At C4L, we actually have our cloud spread across 2 geographically diverse sites, more than 100 miles apart, so anything that was going to happen wouldn't affect both the sites. What we also do between the 2 sites is every 15 minutes we replicate all of customers' data, if they choose us to do so, between the 2 sites. So in the event a disaster struck, a site in London was blown up or something in a terrorist attack, not only has the customer got a maximum 15-minute window of lost data, but they can take compute and memory resources at the secondary site, and they can have their services restarted with their data intact. But no, it's a very good question and something that everyone should be asking their cloud provider, even if it's only an option they want to have for the future. Second question here we've got is, where are our sites located? They're actually located in Bournemouth and London. As I said, approximately 100-mile diversity between the 2 sites, guaranteeing that both one or other sites would always be available, whatever conditions. Okay, that looks like all the questions we have for now. If there are any other questions, please feel free to drop me an email. There's my contact details. Likewise, if you do want to speak to us, the telephone number is on the screen now. Please feel free to phone up and speak to a member of our sales team. If not, I do thank you for your time today and look forward to having you with us next time we present a webinar, which, as I mentioned, is going to focus on the differentiation between public, private and hybrid cloud.